Watch this.
Idaho's lawmakers are taking the day off from, well, making more laws, which gives us a chance to catch you up on everything that happened late last week, including a couple of complicated immigration bills, something not usually in the state's purview.
It's an important part of the historical nature of their community, and I'd urge your support on this bill.
Community stores like the Star Merc are closer to getting some protection from losing their liquor license and their customers. On this day back in 2004, local radio listeners are worried about Lucky Peak Reservoir failing. However, the only flood was the flood of calls to the radio station and emergency managers. An April Fool's joke that missed. We are 12 weeks into the second session of the 67th Idaho Legislature, and they are still in session. I know that's a lot of numbers to throw at you, but nothing like the big numbers thrown at lawmakers last week. Big numbers meaning the linear indicator of where we are when it comes to what is happening at the Capitol. We started back in January with number 381 in the House when it comes to bills. We're now up to 765. That's 384 House bills so far this session introduced. Two of them trying to tackle some pretty big topics at this late juncture, like how to handle a federal issue on a state level. So on this day, when both chambers are quiet to commemorate the holiest of days, Joe Paris takes a look at two separate immigration bills, one of which has already cleared one side of the State House.
The Idaho House has approved a major idea. House Bill 753 creates new crimes dealing with illegal immigration. The proposed bill would make it a misdemeanor the first time and a felony any other time for a quote-unquote alien to enter or attempt to enter the state directly from a foreign nation or simply maintaining an illegal presence without the right paperwork.
Article 1, Section 10 gives us the right as a sovereign state to take care of our own borders and our own land. These are our people, this is our land, and it's our duty and job to protect it.
This is the job of the federal government, and we know that this is a similar copy to some legislation in Texas that has been blocked by two levels of federal courts.
The extended debate on the House floor saw heated back and forth between lawmakers that see the implications of the idea very differently.
Through either your traveling or your food, you're kidding yourselves. So to take such a stand to beat up and denigrate a population that brings value.
I object, Mr. Speaker.
Denigrate stuff. I don't think that's the intention of this bill. So continue.
No one is denigrating a population.
Okay, that's fine. I'll continue on.
Yeah, watch it.
Come on, guys.
More often than not, those of us that follow the law and do not hire illegal labor. What we do is we hire under an H-2A visa, and if you want to know about the program, I can tell you about it. It's a difficult program to comply with. It is expensive, but we do it because we follow the law.
At the end of the session, some lawmakers questioned the timeliness of such a complicated bill.
I think the time is not ripe for this bill to be voted on positively by this body. It needs more time. It needs more development. It came in at the 11th hour. I saw it yesterday.
This has had no input from the ag industry. It's a great political football that we got to close the border. I don't think anybody in the whole state of Idaho is proud of what the border looks like.
If Congress is not going to act, the laboratories of democracies called the states can act. We have the ability today to solve a problem.
The full Idaho House passed the legislation to the Senate. Remains to be seen what will happen over there with it this week. But lawmakers will also have another bill to weigh on the topic this week. House Bill 756. It puts in Idaho code a ban on knowingly hiring an illegal immigrant, tells medical facilities accepting Medicaid to keep a report on how many aliens they serve, mandates E-Verify use for public agencies and private employers with 20 or more employees, and adds the crime human smuggling for a person who knowingly and willfully transports a person into the state who has entered the United States in violation of law. Sponsor Representative Judy Boyle gave a simple explanation as to why she is bringing this bill.
Roadblocks are needed to discourage them from coming, and that's what this does.
All right, Joe, we heard last week on the Senate side when they were just trying to pass a resolution, how things are moving too quickly this late stage of the session, and we need time to digest these things. This bill, 753, went from committee to House vote in 2 days' time. It's 6 pages long, right?
Yeah.
It's a long bill. So I guess the question is there any, I don't know, campaigning that goes along with this? Is that what this is about?
It's going to depend who you ask. I can tell you there are for sure lawmakers in that building that believe that there are some of their colleagues that are standing up and bringing pieces of legislation late in the session, and they don't think they're serious about it because they know there's some pretty heated primaries coming up in May. And the Republican primaries, the truth of it is, I mean, that's basically the election here in Idaho.
Yeah.
So I think there are lawmakers that are in a position that are very serious about doing anything they can to get reelected. At the same time, Brian, I've spoken to lawmakers on a personal level that say they're serious about solving this immigration crisis the Idaho way because they truly believe the federal government has left the gem state out to dry.
And without any input, though, from the ag community, as we just heard, I mean, they're going to try to do this in just a matter of days because they're still trying to get out of here as soon as possible. Last question, a lot of people saw that Representative Scott saying to Representative Mickelson, yeah, watch it. What were the repercussions of that?
Right. So the House did go at ease for a short time, and the House Speaker, Mike Moyle, he basically gave a warning that, hey, guys, let's not make this personal. We know that this is a very sensitive issue. We know there's a lot of debates in this, but we can't be calling each other out on a personal way. I think even the House Speaker, I could go back and look. I think he said we're all friends here, which may be a little tongue-in-cheek.
Okay. So we're still got a couple days left, possibly, right? Are we still looking to get out this week? Still budgets to pass.
There's still budgets to pass, and there's still big ideas out here. So, I mean, again, and I think there was a misconception among some of our viewers that thought, oh, they have to be done by next week. Yeah. Idaho's not like Oregon. There's no hard out. This could go on forever.
We'll see if it does. Thanks, Joe.
If we don't have liquor, we will try to stay open. We will. But I'll be honest with you. I don't know if we can.
Meanwhile, there is a bill at the State House that's been hanging around since the middle of February, which is a long time to be in the State House. This one has the actual potential, though, to do something significant for the city of Star, to save the Star Merc. Though it wouldn't really change anything, kind of just keep the status quo, like keeping something happening that's been happening for decades, right, Andrew?
Yeah, it's kind of how the liquor laws work in Idaho. We've talked about bars, but for liquor stores specifically, so there's a special distributor license, and if you walk into a state-run liquor store, that's typically the only place you can get liquor, but not in Star. They have that distributor license. That's because a state store is not always a good investment in a small town. So those special distributors like the Star Merc, they fill that gap for the state. But eventually the state will move in as the place grows. Then they'll drop the agreement. And that's what is happening in Star. So the Senate amended and approved a bill to protect these agreements, historic distributors they call them, and those small businesses that grew to rely on the state liquor. For a mom-and-pop convenience store, the Star Merc built a brand.
Not too bad.
On longevity.
I mean, we're over 100 years old.
Lifetimes.
Oh, yeah.
To Crystal Kelly.
Everybody knew everybody. Everybody knows everybody's stories, and it's not the same anymore.
Towns grow, places change.
My childhood is kind of getting taken away piece by piece.
Or rather, replaced.
I really want the Merc to be the one that doesn't get taken away.
For decades, the Merc peddled state liquor as a favor.
But it has been good for us.
And Denise knows it's in danger.
Why would you want to do that? You know, it makes no sense when we've offered you basically as much room as you want. They literally could come and take it all away, I guess. I don't know what they'll do.
The Senate voted to crush those fears entirely.
I think this is a good move to preserve the opportunity for our small stores that are out there that this can be an important part of their business model.
House Bill 570 wants to protect these special distributor agreements, even after a state store moves into town. It gives shoppers options and historic distributors a chance.
And keep in mind, as that happens, competition will eventually take, work itself out, and if there doesn't become, or it no longer is productive to continue an operation, then that'll kind of take care of itself, so to speak.
The Senate amended the bill, ensuring a historic distributor agreement cannot be transferred, and a business cannot relocate to keep the agreement. It garnered support from some of the highest chairs in the chamber.
In my former district, the community of Star has one of these stores. It's been there for I don't know how many decades. It's an important part of the historical nature of their community, and I'd urge your support on this bill. Thank you.
Because without liquor,
we are counting down the days. Yes.
The Merc's likely to cut costs
It's my favorite job I've ever had.
without a receipt to return back to how it once was.
It's like one of the main cornerstones in Star that's still left standing. And everything else has changed.
The bill now moves back to the House because the Senate amended that legislation. The House now, too, needs to vote to approve those changes. That original bill, Brian, I believe it was 66-1 that passed in the House. They really didn't change a whole lot to it other than clarify some pieces of language. So I imagine this is probably ripe to get to the governor's desk.
So I guess that answers my question of why the delay with this one. It was introduced February 15th, I believe, and now we're here April 1st, still working its way through.
It sat in the Senate for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think there's only 5 people voting against it. And so it had strong support. I imagine the House will also support it again, but no guarantee.
Back to the House, back to the Senate. Senate already passed it, right?
Senate passed it.
Back to
it's
the House.
governor's desk.
Gotcha.
If it continues on the path to become a law.
All right. Thank you, Andrew.
We, of course, do not like unnecessary concern on the part of the public.
What's the best April Fool's prank you've ever been a part of? Well, there was one played decades ago that sent some Idahoans into a spiral and Lucky Peak reservoir managers into a spin cycle. This is not the part of the show where we ask you for your April Fool's Day jokes. Really, unless you have a really good one. If not, you can still message us about anything we've talked about on today's show. Text us, 208-321-5614. Don't forget to include your name and the hashtag #the208. And stick around. Seriously, if it's short enough and sans swear words, we might share yours to wrap up the show. No joke. It is April Fool's Day, of course, the day for pranksters. Did you get the salt in your coffee instead of sugar this morning? Did you bite into your Oreo at lunch and discover it was toothpaste in the middle instead of that Crisco filling? Someone stick a Post-it note on your back? Oh, those are the classics. Well, speaking of classical, here's one from 1935 when someone, a student prankster presumably, released about a dozen bats into an Idaho Falls high school. Some brave boys were able to capture them, the story tells us, and they learned they were taken from the walls of a nearby cave, which is west of Idaho Falls by about 16 miles. Classes were disrupted. Female teachers and students were worried about those bats getting tangled in their hair, so it was chaos for a bit. Good times, right? Well, anyway, while most April Fool's jokes are pretty benign or disruptive at best, there was one prank pulled 2 decades ago by a local radio station that almost caused complete public panic. Okay, well, not quite that far, but for a few, it was all too real. And for those in charge, those in charge of, well, everything around the area, the hoax wasn't a bit funny. The year was 2004. Life was simpler. Flip phones were the sharpest in cellular tech, and Dan Brown had everyone trying to decipher the Da Vinci Code. In Boise, morning radio was being led by Bill and Doug of 100.3 The X.
Yeah, very popular. I'll happily talk about them anytime.
Talk is all we can do about them these days because you can't seem to find any photos of the two online. but I digress.
They were ahead of their time. It was sketch comedy on radio.
Big J was a small part of that show.
I believe at the time I was working middays, so from 10 until 3. So I would come on right after the morning show and was still sort of their stunt guy, so I would do stuff here and there with them.
On that Thursday morning, the 1st of April 2004, Jay says Bill and Doug decided to make a joke of April Fool's Day and play a prank over the air that Lucky Peak Reservoir had ruptured. But as Big J puts it 20 years later, the caper wasn't even that convincing.
You know, the description of like, oh, the Boise Dam has broken, and there were sound effects and there were fish flopping around inside the studio. So that's the level of ridiculousness that was going on. Like, it wasn't them purposely trying to say, hey, the Boise Dam's broke, run for your life. And they took that, I think, and thought everybody would understand that it was ridiculous, but apparently that wasn't the case.
In fact, their bit would cause a bit of a problem.
Yes.
Phone calls kept coming?
Yeah. And we're like, there's the Boise Dam's fine, everybody's okay.
Listeners even called the sheriff's office to ask if it was true. It wasn't, which is why the Army Corps of Engineers called it a sick joke.
These days and times, there's enough concern in general around it. We certainly don't want to add to that.
Increasing concern was not even a concern for Bill and Doug.
But that wasn't even the intent, which is what's crazy about the story.
What was the intent?
And just to have fun. You know, you don't want to get in trouble by any means, but at the same time, when everybody's talking about what you just did, I mean, that's kind of what you do in radio morning. So it was kind of a victory in that regard, and especially when you consider how ridiculous the idea of it was.
Well, Jay told us he doesn't remember anybody getting in trouble because of the bit, Bill or Doug, and he also doesn't remember anything like it happening since. He says, given how much misinformation and misrepresentation there is online and on social media these days, they just want to be a place of refuge from that. Lucky Peak Reservoir, by the way, was the prop of another April Fool's prank just 4 years ago, when after the 6.5 earthquake hit northeast of Boise the day before, there were some rumors going around about how the dam was damaged. It wasn't, and of course, it still stands strong today.
My, oh my, some beautiful sunny places in Idaho. Let me start out and just talk about the snow water content, very important for the spring months. And I can say that about 3 weeks ago, as I was using this on the air, we were showing you that Boise was up to 105%. Now it's 96%. About a week or so ago, it was 97%. So 100% happens to be the average. So we're pretty close to the average along through there. It's not bad, but you know, when we see more rain on the way or more snow for the mountains, it's somewhat needed. We'd like to see it above that as we head toward the summertime. As you look at the Weiser, the Payette, you can see 88 and 87%. And the storms, especially from last week, they were huge and coming down through Oregon and into the southwest corner of Idaho. Look at that for Hawaii, 188%. And that's up from about 140% from where it was the beginning of last week. It's come down a little bit over here in Bear Lake at 128%. So you can see it's low, and it's still low in the northern portion of the state. So the temperatures that we've had for about the last week and a half to 2 weeks, you can see they've been pretty mild. And even though they've come down, they're still well above the 50-degree mark into the mid-50s. Averages now are starting to get up into the mid to the upper 50s, but we're a little soon this year. So there's been a little bit of melting. So overall, just to be right about average is looking fairly good for all of us. If you look at the U.S. Drought Monitor, anywhere where you see topography along through here where it's a clear map, that's about average. So that's where we're at. And that just means that we need more precipitation as we move into the spring. You notice it's very dry here in western Montana, also in Arizona, as well as New Mexico, but it has improved a lot throughout the west. And a lot of it was this. This is the month of March, and the rain that was received, over 2 inches of rain. And as you notice, the normal is about 1.33. So, you know, we're about 70.70 above in the way of this 2 inches of rain compared to what's normal. And this isn't bad. So it's doing pretty good, actually, the way we're seeing it at this point. So temperatures in the valley are in the 60s with the sunshine. They have sunshine in most of mountain locations. The temperatures are in the 50s for today. Storm system coming in. We've got another one, but out ahead of it, it's sunny, warm conditions. That's going to last at least through tomorrow and a portion of Wednesday. By the time we get into Wednesday evening, we're going to see some isolated thunderstorms that'll start popping up around eastern Oregon and southwestern Idaho. And then finally the rain comes in. And you notice that's a northwesterly storm. So it was southwesterly, now it's northwesterly. And that's why temperatures from 70 degrees or so are going to be dropping down into the 50s within the next couple of days. So for now, you see the clear conditions and the sunshine. As we continue through Tuesday, it looks pretty good, but then Wednesday, some thunderstorms up into the mountains, and eventually you'll see those thunderstorms that are going to start pulling in through here. That's Wednesday afternoon, and rain showers overnight again, which is going to continue into Thursday, even some rain showers on Friday.
You know, Rick Lance usually makes an appearance on the 208 to tell us about what to expect with the weather. You just heard. Sometimes Rick, though, he makes more than one appearance. And someone else noticed one of these rare moments last week. Joe Prin, an Eagle, said, "That's funny, Rick rolling by like a tumbleweed through Andrew's shot." And what he's referring to happened last Tuesday when Andrew was on the show here reporting on the Idaho Transportation Department budget. Joe, yep, there he goes. There goes Rick, right behind Andrew, and he could tell he got caught. You look at him moseying on through Andrew's shot right in the middle of that story. Yep, and you could see he was kind of like a deer in the headlights there. Well, apparently Rick walked into the newsroom after that, and everyone told him that he did walk through the shot. His response to that, remember this, Rick? When he said, "I have to walk out to see if it was raining." So I guess my question to you, Rick, is what does all that equipment behind you tell you? You have to go outside.
But you still have to go outside.
Still got to check the windows.
Out there. We're old timers around here, so we're going to do it, okay? In fact, I'm going out there right now.
You can walk behind my shot if you need to. There's a door on this side, too. All right, several comments today basically about immigration and the bill that's being tried, or I guess making its way through the State House at this point. This one from JD in Boise. Current federal administration refuses to enforce the immigration laws on the books, and the Constitution allows states to do so when the feds fail in their responsibility to protect U.S. citizens. And that is true in some points, but there's also the Supremacy Clause, which says federal law basically takes over state law. And states can pass laws that have to do with like E-Verify, forcing employers to use that system to make sure that they're legal. And they can restrict benefits like SNAP. But in 2010, a law in Arizona, part of that, a big chunk of it was struck down because, well, basically saying police can't check the immigration status of people that they arrest in their state. So you can bet a lot of this is going to end up in court if it advances. If this passes, it'll end up in the courts, just like the one in Texas. Why is our legislature trying to put laws that will be challenged in court and overturned and cost the taxpayers more money, says Bob. The legislature should pass a bill that requires real work of the legislature, like the budget, be done up front, and any time remaining can be used for their fool's errands and politicking. GOP-dominated legislature has two things backwards. They spent 2 months on culture wars and leave important business until the 11th hour. Pretty half-baked way to cook the legal potato, says John. Why is the state even involved with liquor sales? It seems private industry knows better than the government. Well, they have this thing in the Constitution for temperance and morality, so they're kind of obligated to do that.